Yeah, thank you. So, first of all, good morning, buongiorno, and yes, it is now easier for me, but at the same time, there is very less for me to talk after the talk in the morning, which covers a lot of things, but it has eased my ways as well. So I will talk about the problems identification and some of the broader solutions, just a food for thought related to the food system in the scenario of climate change, and specifically emphasis on the third pole of the world, that is Himalayas and Karakoram. So I have so many slides, but I will go quickly through this to show some of the pictures and some of the data extracted from various papers. So this is my institution. I will start from the ecosystem services. The nature gives us ecosystem services, and you can see the services from the freshwater plants to honeybees and so on. Basically, I'm plant science student, so I usually talk from the perspective of plant sciences as well. So what are the ecosystem services? Most of you are more familiar with this, that the services can be categorized into provisioning in the form of food, biodiversity, etc. And also clean water, wood and fuel, and etc. etc. It could be supporting services in the form of photosynthesis, soil formation, etc. It could be regulating services in the form of purifying water, controlling erosion, and storing the extra carbon from the atmosphere. And at the same time, the cultural services. We are being deliberated for the last 3 years mainly to link the culture and nature. So yes, the aesthetics, the stewardship, the recreation, and the education services. And mostly the human societies, for many reasons, get these services from the plants segment of the biota. So these are few pictures from some of the Himalayan wild foods. So I will go just for the aesthetics through this, various berries and various medicinal plants like taxus, peonia, and ephedra, etc. And yes, some of the fruits, the wild fruits being utilized in Himalayas. So just going quickly through these, and then to the problems about which I will talk about. The problems are so many, and yes, there is a complexity of issues around the ecosystem between nature and culture, but the problems in the light of my area, the countries around Himalayas and Hindu Kush, are mainly population explosion, I can say, over there for human beings, and then due to climate change in that population, the biodiversity loss, the drought worldwide, the global heat, the pollution increase, especially the CO2 increase, the forest fires, the COVID-19 recently, and one of the human-driven thing like Russian-Ukraine war, that affecting the food system as well. So I will start with the population distribution. That we have the population over there, and you can see the countries, the population per square kilometer. So in the South Asia and back at China, you can see the huge population, and it sometimes imbalances the whole food system of the world. And similarly, the biodiversity loss. So when we talk about the biodiversity loss, the habitat loss, the invasive species, the overexploitation, and the climate change associated global warming, and again pollution due to industrialization and utilization of fossil fuels. And when we come to the biodiversity loss from the breaching the safe limits in the world, you can clearly see the global map and the global pattern. And when we come to the drought, so many countries, including European countries, you can see on the map that they are at high risk of drought over the last few years, and this is an image from 2016. It's not working. Anyway, I put my memory stick over there, so I hope it will work.
It happened also a few months ago, a few minutes ago. I don't know if it is a standby problem.
Yeah, so let me fix it. I'm trying my best to fix it. Can record? Can.
So in the meantime, if there are comments or questions, we have seen the complexity of the issues. Climate change, of course, is man-made, but is one of the different threats to food security and sovereignty. We have talked actually not much about the non-climate change determined causes of these instabilities. Maybe a lot could have been talked about the food insecurity brought by the war we are facing with just now at the moment. And our Ukrainian friends are telling us that we should talk more about that, but I think these reflections can, of course, be very much developed also within a scientific society where things can be seen also from a perspective which is more, let's say, more calm and distant from the horrible time we are living in right now. Are there comments or questions on this first part of the presentation of Professor Hahn, while we are trying to solve this small technical problem? We had actually a very similar one at the start of the day. These slides and the PowerPoint presentations, this beautiful instrument originated in a school of management, which is basically now dictating our trajectories. We are back to the presentation. Good Lord. Okay. Thanks a lot. Thanks for the technical assistance. Go ahead, Shuja, thanks.
Thank you, Professor Andrea. I'm a bit relaxed now because I was stuck in the middle, but yes. So I think we were somewhere here, yes. So the global drought, yeah. So why the global drought is, most of you know, and I'm sure all of you know it much better, but it's just a reminder for all of us that what we should do. And it's definitely due to the, mainly due to the atmospheric carbon dioxide, and you can see the graph, that how it has raised from 1960 to 2020 from 320 part per million to 420 part per million, and according to some geographers, if it crosses the level of 5 point something, it will be irreversible for a human being to sequester that carbon. So we have to think about this. And then when we go to the global heat map, again, you can see the global heat map, and I'm mainly focusing in the Indo-Pak, in the surrounding region, because that huge population, again, I would say, imbalance the food system and everything of the world. And yes, then the global estimated fire regimes. Only in Pakistan this year, more than 1,200 fire incidents happened due to unexpected early drought in the month of April this year. And you can see the fire regimes. that how it could affect the world population and especially the world biota and plants. And when we go to the widespread hunger due to COVID, that COVID was also a problem, and it was a projection in 2020 some of the countries will go under the hunger condition. Though this could not happen in that way, but yes, in that poor part of the country still there are so many people who have low and less access to very poor nutrient containing food, and sometimes they have only one time of food in a day, and that is also of very low quality. So these are the things when we talk about the food sovereignty and food injustice which happened in the post-COVID era now. And yes, this is one of the last risks I felt to put in front of you, the Russia-Ukraine war, because you can see the graph that most of the food and the main staple food comes from these two countries. So unless the unrest is resolved, we will have further problems, and we currently feeling this. So the humans should think about these political gastronomy and the things like that at national levels. And yes, I will then come to the Himalayas and Hindu Kush and Karakoram. Why? Because this is just the length, not the square area. The Himalayas 2,900 kilometer long, Hindu Kush some 900, Karakoram some 600 kilometer long mountains, and they give rivers, the water system of all the big countries. The number one China, the second India, and then fifth Pakistan. They feed actually the water and the irrigated system of that part of the world. I'm interested mainly in Pakistan because Pakistan is the confluence point of all these three mountains and a big river system, and we have probably one of the world's largest canal system in our country as well, comprising of more than 10 big rivers and more than 50 small rivers and hundreds of canals. Yes, and one of the Chinese group of others have considered as third pole of the world. Yes, of course it is third pole of the world, so world is not bipolar. It must be tripolar. So if this pole is imbalanced, the whole world may shatter. Yes. And yes, if you see the population of these countries, out of 7.753 billion of population, 3.556 billion comes from their third pole of the world. So quite close to half of the population. So when we talk about the eco-gastronomy or gastrosopy this morning, so we have to think about all these figures as well in terms of food security, food quality, and for sure food sovereignty. Yes. And then the importance of that region in terms of rivers, as I mentioned, and also it is on the risk list due to fault line. And we had the earthquake history in the 2005. We had a big earthquake that killed about 65,000 people, and some 300,000 were amputed, and so many are homeless, and they are still homeless. So we are at the fault line again at that place of the world, in third pole of the world, and it always creates problems in every walk of life, including the food system. But at the same time, we have a very good fertile land, and we have the capability and potential to produce more food if it is guarded well in the umbrella of slow food as well as scientific community and plant scientists. And this is another my interest area, that again that area, the Indo-Pak and the Himalayas, you can locate it, and it is in the pluralistic classification of the world. It hosts two kingdom system. If we see the Europe, it is only holoarctic kingdom, but in that system we have both vegetation from holoarctic in those mountains, and then we have paleotropical sort of vegetation like African. So we are the custodian of two kinds of natural vegetation, and that again a potential of producing more food and more wild alternative and wild relatives of the economic plants. Yes, and then the monsoon, the summer monsoon, that create a small area over there, that is Sino-Japanese region, that link us with the Far East Asia as well, and we have the commonalities in terms of floristic with those as well. And then due to all those features, geological, geographical and geohistorical features, we have unique vegetation of some endemic nature. The top 20 region in terms of endemism, we are in them. So we have the magnificent rivers over there, you can see, and the beautiful lakes. In terms of aesthetic services, when we talk about the cultural services and also the food services, the provisioning one. So these are the big and small rivers in the Himalayas. And yes, of course, the pastures, which are important in the food systems. And yes, this is one of the area in northern Pakistan. Now, these are the potentials, and I have talked already about the problems. So what could be the solutions? Already different panels have talked about various solutions as well, but I will come to the broader solution under the umbrella of United Nations, which is quite close to the message of Terra Madre as well. If we go to the sustainable goals, the 17 SDG goals proposed by UNO, it is something close to the heart of Terra Madre and all the food systems. It include health, the facility of education, gender equality, the problems of water, sustainable energy, sustainable economy, sustainable industrialization, reduce the inequalities, you can read, and inclusive cities, sustainable consumptions, urgent actions on climate change, conserve sea and marine resources, protect the environment, inclusive societies, as this morning we heard about the geopolitical gastronomic party, so the inclusive society, and strengthen global partnership. And yes, the poverty alleviation, and of course the hunger, which we term here usually the food sovereignty as well. And yes, at research level we do the academician the research about those areas, the basic data. It is one of the solution as well to identify the problems in those remote areas which are sometimes inaccessible or very least accessible for many reasons. And we can then prioritize some of the plants, especially some of the plants which are endemic in nature, and we have tried for some of the endemic plants and some of the endangered plants of Indo-Himalayas to put it in the conservation perspective and the IUCN categories and criteria, that how it could be identified, categorized, and then safeguarded in those natural ecosystems. So these are, yes, various techniques we can use, the regression analysis. If some of the plants falls based on the use values above the regression line, we could consider them as prioritized plants. So at the research individual level, this could be also one step of the solution to those changes. And well, now just quick visit of some of the foods in Pakistan. Though yes, from the Hindu Kush mountains we have certain recipes in foods. We have hundreds of them, though we have not put it in the Arc of Taste, but we will do it soon. And I was expecting this event within the Terra Madre initially, so I put these pictures as well, but I'm sure it will fit. It will also be fit here. So this is just a quick visit of some of the foods grown in Hindu Kush mountains and some of the recipes. So I'm just going just for a quick visit, just for the aesthetics, I can say. Yeah. In the local maize bread, yes, yesterday we saw some of these furnace in a poster. Yeah. And yes, the local rice, which is native to Kurram agency, one of the area in Pakistan-Afghanistan border, and it is one of the unique rice over there. Locally called Ghatta Urija, so it is not found anywhere in the world. Yes, and some of the pomegranates, some of the wild figs, which may be common in other areas as well. Yes, and of course the other plants, plums and honey, local honey of the wild bees. Yes, some of the spices and the local, we can say, slow-grown chickens, and the slow sweets, the locally made sweets, and yes, the local butter which are prepared on the old passion. Yes. And this the wild herb amaranthus, and then yes, the mint tea and mint kawa, and of course again some of the honeys and the trout, fish of the Himalayas. Yes, and some of the food from the Karakoram range, the Gilgit-Baltistan, Pakistan-China border. So the list is very long, but I have put just for thinking and working and collaboration purposes. And now I will come to the last part of my presentation, that in all this climatic change scenario, what can be done and who can do that at national level. So some of the nation must take responsibilities, because if this carbon emission continues, then there is a projection to the end of 21st century that the carbon level will reach to 1313 per part per million, and it will be irreversible per human. So it will be like 6th extinction on the globe. 5 extinction occur due to various natural hazards and reasons. But this will be a man-made extinction. So we have to think about this, how to reduce the carbon emission. And we have recently, in the last month, saw that we cannot achieve the goals due to the natural hazard of flood in Pakistan, where 30 million of people are homeless now, and a lot of mosquitoes and dengue virus and things like that. And you can see the Swat Valley, which I belong to. It is also known as Switzerland of Asia. But you can see the damages and destruction of the flood. That there was, on 22nd of August, there was 245 cubic of water in the river. In the human history, it was the largest amount, because the monsoon entered to the dry temperate region beyond their limits in the Himalayas, and it melts the glacier. The glaciers were eroded, and the buildings just blown like the matches box. And all the Sindh province is now buried in the water, because there is no exit of water to the Arabian Sea. So we are already facing with these situations in our country. And after that, the mosquito outburst and the dengue virus is now very common over there. And yes, again, if we come to the global carbon emission in terms of food production, if we do not grow the slow food and we grow we go for the industrial food, so you can see the responsibility of the nation. China is on top, and then US, India, Brazil, and so on, and some of the East Asian countries. And when we come to the general emission of carbon dioxide emission, again you can see the emission level at country levels. So who can think how much? So this should be decided by the human societies and the policy makers for rest of the human beings in the world as well. And hopes and optimisms, though we are a bit hopeless nowadays since August for the last 2 months, but yes, There are still some vegetation on the globe, and we have continued plantation, the billion tree tsunami in the last government of Pakistan. We have planted millions of trees, and I think the other countries are also doing these. So this is one of the hope. Another hope is in terms of food is the production of organic food in the world. And yes, of course, the Slow Food Association is also doing a great job, because it gives the message not to go for the industrial and the highly water consumption food and highly fuel consumptive based food. So we are having the hopes. And yes, to the end, I'm thankful to the organizer of Terra Madre. I'm delegate of them. Thanks to the International Society for Gastronomic Sciences and Studies, and Carlo Petrini, because he was the main founder, I think, the creation of all these events. I think so. And thank you, Professor Andrea, my friend, for inviting me for the last few years. And yes, last, life is not a rehearsal. You have to have it once. So let's promise to do good and work for slow food and for good food. Manana, thank you, grazie, shukriya. Thank you.
Terra Manana Shuja. I think it was very nice to change this perspective, which is very much, for obvious reason, in Europe, Eurocentric.